From Photonics Media, this is All Things Photonics, a podcast shedding light on industry-shaping advancements in lasers, optics, imaging, metrology, and sensing. Each episode, our hosts speak with luminaries, rising stars, and market leaders about the trends shaping the current and future landscape of photonics. From space and deep-sea exploration to precision timekeeping and advanced manufacturing, this is the podcast for progress on All Things Photonics. This season of All Things Photonics is brought to you by Polyscience and Thor Labs.
Today's episode is brought to you by Polyscience. For over 60 years, the Polyscience line of award-winning temperature control equipment has been helping the photonics industry reach its goals safely and efficiently. Our products are made in America and delivered globally. Please visit polyscience.com to learn how we can help you. Changing the world of chillers is more than a tagline. It's a part of our history. Today's episode is also brought to you by Thor Labs, a global designer and manufacturer of photonics technologies. We provide a comprehensive portfolio of over 22,000 stocked items for same-day shipment, complemented by endless custom solutions enabled by our vertical integration. Visit thorlabs.com to learn more.
Photonics may not be defined by its applications, but there's no denying that one of the most impactful ways to understand the importance of the field is to tie it to its end uses. In the biomedical field, photonics applications are life-saving. Today on All Things Photonics, we open the door to some of the core techniques in this realm with luminary Boston University professor Ji-Xin Cheng. Our discussion spans three main techniques, each well-known and well-studied. Optical coherence tomography uses laser radiation to better image the progression of medical conditions and improve diagnostics. Advanced fluorescence imaging can detect and assess tumors in living organs and other tissues. And Raman spectroscopy offers a chemical analysis with vital roles to play in medicine, biopharma, and other areas of life sciences. Even with advancements in these areas, there are still limitations to the capabilities of biophotonics. Overcoming these limitations and identifying new thresholds is what attracted Professor Cheng to the field. In a conversation with senior editor Joe Kaczynski, Cheng sheds light on what drives him to continue his research in medical photonics and the breakthroughs he's currently working on. The celebrated scientist also discusses areas of prior progress as well as new and emerging opportunities in biophotonics and biomedical optics. But first, Photonics Spectra editor Jake Saltzman chats with Ronnen Lovinger, CEO of silicon photonics technology platform provider DustPhotonics. Dust, which closed $24 million in Series B funding earlier this year, is fresh off the release of its merchant 1.6 terabits per second silicon photonics engine. Lovinger discusses the offering as well as opportunities for Dust's technology to address AI in cloud service data center applications. As the capabilities of silicon photonics technologies rise to meet the needs of hyperscalers, industry's own needs in manufacturing, productizing, packaging, and beyond are subject to increased consideration. In our conversation, Lovinger points to two trends driving the company and the industry sector more broadly: the aforementioned adoption of silicon photonics and a spike to the forecast for 1.6 terabit modules. DustPhotonics CEO Ronnen Lovinger with senior editor Jake Saltzman is up next.
We are talking again today about silicon photonics and optical interconnects, silicon photonics, optical interconnects to be precise. A dynamic technology area. DustPhotonics is a dynamic player within that technology area. I have Ronnen Lovinger with us here today to describe the company. And we're going to start off that way by asking you, Ronnen, to describe DustPhotonics.
Okay, thanks, Jake, and thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast. DustPhotonics is a silicon photonics technology and chip company. We're focused on developing and delivering optical chips for optical communication, for optical networking.
And what are the origins of the company? This is obviously, all things considered, a nascent technology space. What are the origins of DustPhotonics and its solution areas?
So actually, we as a company, we started as a transceiver company originally, We started in 2017. We started to do transceivers and optical cables. And about a year after, we started to work on silicon photonics, kind of like a future technology we want to build into transceivers. And about 3-4 years ago, we decided to focus only on silicon photonics, mainly because we felt that we have a big differentiation in that area. And it was an area where also we had much less competition. So the company has been focused only on silicon photonics in the past 3-4 years, and that's been very good for the company.
So that critical shift that you mentioned 3 or 4 years ago, moving towards silicon photonics, and obviously, as with any shift, the competition is going to be a major consideration. From the technology side, what was it about silicon photonics that served as the impetus to make this shift? Was there something particularly promising about that technology at that time?
You know, when you look at silicon photonics, it's really, what semiconductor has been for electronics. Silicon photonics is for photonics, is for optics, and what it means is that you can get all the advantages of making things smaller and making things cheaper. Power is lower, cost is lower. Like all these advantages, because silicon is cheap, you can get now in silicon photonics. And although this is a technology that exists for about 20 years, and it might sound a lot, but it's not that much. What happened in the last few years is that this became very available, much more available. There's an ecosystem of fabs, of assembly companies. So it made it now a technology which is more available and so also more desirable. And on the other hand, when you look at where the market is going, it is a necessary technology. So up until 3-4 years ago, this is a technology which was another one that you can use. You can use just discrete components. You can use silicon photonics to do optics. But when you look to the higher bandwidth, when you look to the end goal, which is kind of integrating, co-packaging together with electronic chips, you must go to silicon photonics. So understanding that now it's becoming more available and it's getting towards the time that it has to be necessary to use was what drove us to actually go to silicon photonics only.
So that's interesting. There are a lot of things that are happening in silicon photonics now that were either just beginning or had yet to really conceive when you talk about the shift even 3 or 4 years ago, right? This is a fast moving, but ultimately a relatively young technology. When you moved into silicon photonics and more wholly into silicon photonics 3 or 4 years ago, what was the forecast that you and your colleagues at DustPhotonics had? I mean, was there this anticipation of a budding ecosystem? Was there this understanding that where we are now with scalability being this big consideration, that was going to be the big consideration?
Well, scalability has always been something that you have to be ready for. And I think silicon photonics is meant to be that scalable solution. But I think we didn't know that the AI boom is going to come. And I think that need for scalability and where it is today is much more than what we anticipated. You would talk, 3-4 years ago, you would talk about hundreds of thousands as something which is huge. Today, you have to talk in millions. If you cannot do millions of parts, you're not in the game.
Right. And forgive me, I'm going to frame this from a very, very high level, but at the highest level, right, Dust can be, I think fairly grouped by its two solution areas, right? You have those in AI and then also those in cloud service data centers. And there's obviously overlap there. But is that a fair characterization of what Dust is doing? It's sort of big picture undertaking addressing AI, but also cloud data?
So I would say that because we provide products for optical connectivity in different applications. So it can be for cloud services, it can be for AI, it can be for other applications.
Mhm.
And basically, what's common to all of them is that you have data centers. These are different data centers, applications using data centers. So you have to connect servers and compute together, and we do that for all of them. So we are not really application specific, but you are right that these are the two main applications, AI and cloud services, that we are addressing, and that is where the very big volume is.
I mean, is there? I know that obviously, in giving what Dust does, application has to be sort of a downstream consideration. Um, but in sort of the value chain of what the company is doing day to day, where does application fit into that? Because it is obviously ever changing, and while that may not mean that your work is necessarily changing, there has to be some consideration for the nature of the evolution of applications. Just curious where that sort of fits into your day to day ideal.
Yeah. So I think where we meet that now, and again, I'm just going to give cloud services is something that we've been talking about for 20 years, right? I mean, again, my background, I was at Mellanox, which was acquired by NVIDIA for 18 years, and we were selling data centers to cloud services for many years. Um, but the AI actually not only provided much more scale, meaning that the consideration of scalability is now becoming number one or number two rather than number five or six. But besides that, there's also things about AI clusters that you have to be much more reliable. There's some considerations in terms of latency, in terms of reliability, things that are not that important for other applications, and here are very critical. And it means that we have to make sure that the chips that we do are much more reliable. We do much more stringent testing. There's some more margins that you need to put in the design to make sure that you can cover these new applications as well.
And I know that Dust has a pretty rich history in transceiver design, and that hasn't completely gone away, right? In fact, OFC this year was big for Dust in transceiver design. How has that remained an area of focus? Obviously, all of these, whether it's interconnects or transceivers, however we bill it, there's some interconnect there, to use that word again in a different context. On the transceiver side, though, what is Dust doing?
Actually, the short answer is we don't do anything on transceivers.
Okay.
We are, as I said, we're a silicon photonics chip company only. What we do is our customers are transceiver companies. So we partner with those transceiver companies to deploy our products in different applications. And if you refer at OFC and also, by the way, at ECOC that was just in Frankfurt a few weeks ago, we demonstrated some of the engagements we have with customers, some of the products we have with customers, both on immersion cooling, on getting to higher speeds of 800 gig, and even 1.6 terabit per second.
Right. And Phenol is the collaboration of which I speak. Certainly, there are others, and I want to ask about that sort of the nature of collaboration in this industry, in this field. Everyone has a secret sauce, but there is a necessary working together, right, to advance the technology. Are you sort of hunting for partners? Are they coming to you? How does that work? Because it is sort of we're building the plane as we fly it type of thing here.
So it's an interesting question. I think first of all, I think like any product, you have customers, and you need to make sure that they're aware of your technology. And we have, I think, a lot of uniqueness in our technology, which customers want to use. And maybe just to add just a few things on that. So there are not too many silicon photonics companies, and I would say the silicon photonics is a difficult technology. You need a level of expertise. Some people like to use the term black magic, but eventually what that means is that you need really deep expertise to know what you're doing. And in silicon photonics, it means that you need to know process and photonics and optics and packaging, and you need to do all of that to get to a very good product, to understand how every photon gets from one place to the other. In DustPhotonics, we have several technologies that we have developed that provide us uniqueness. One is the high-speed modulator design that we do. Second thing is a unique technology where we integrate lasers into our products. And that provides also much better performance, lower cost because we can use less lasers. But what's very interesting is that because we have that type of integration, we are also ready for technologies like immersion cooling. So this uniqueness of technology that we're providing actually allow us to attract customers. Amphenol is one of them. Eoptolink, I mean, those are public, but there's many customers today that see the advantages that we have in our technology. the high-speed modulation, the laser attach, the immersion cooling readiness. And I also should mention also that we have even the next technology of 1.6 terabit per second, which is now just evolving. These are very advanced technologies. So companies who are looking for silicon photonics want to have this advanced technology, and they also want to make sure that they're not using a company for just for one product. They want to see that there's a roadmap that they can use in the future products as well.
Talk to me about this notion of roadmap, because on the one hand, the quest that DustPhotonics is pursuing doesn't change, but at the same time, so many things around it are changing, right? You step one foot in the other direction, the notion of laser integration is advancing, or packaging technology has advanced. Talk to me about that dynamic, staying sort of focused on the same roadmap amid all of this change and all of this progress.
So, when you look at the demand coming from, the demand eventually comes from these end customers, the cloud services and AI companies. And again, just to throw names in the air, right, would be NVIDIA and Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, Facebook, Meta. And all of these are the big hyperscalers who are using or building data centers. And these data centers, each of them have their own architecture, and they would define which type of connectivity, what is the speed of links they need, what is the type of product they need. If it's again, and I don't want to throw things which are maybe our audience would not know, but there's different type of transceivers at speeds, 400 gig, 800 gig, parallel, or multi wavelength. So you have different products. So, and this may evolve. You have some of these companies who start with one architecture and move to the other. What we have done at DustPhotonics is that we have built ourselves different building blocks. We have modulators, we have the laser attach, we have different splitters, we have different components, which we then can play with and integrate into the different chip which is required.
Right.
So this allows us also to build very fast other chips that we may need. And of course, what we do is we make sure that we keep ourselves very close to the end customers to understand what they need now and what they need in the future, so our roadmap can be built accordingly.
In that spirit, I want to ask you about Dust's merchant silicon photonics engine. Please feel free to give away as much as you wish about the essence of the technology and the inner workings, but certainly you don't have to. Tell us about that technology and what it aims to enable.
You mean our silicon photonics technology?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, today we have chips which allow any type of connectivity in data centers for 400 gig, 800 gig, and 1.6 terabit per second, which basically is what all the different clusters are using today. We have built already the chips to enable that in the different configurations, as we also spoke to the different end customers. And as I mentioned, we have high-speed modulators, which basically enable 100 gigabit or 200 gigabit for every channel. So that bandwidth, as I said, can go up to 1.6 terabit. We have the laser integration technology, which embeds lasers into our chips, and that allows a very unique offering where you can use. It actually simplifies the solution, as you don't have to integrate lasers later on into the product. And it also makes it cheaper because you can use less lasers because of the technology we use. These are the key things in our products and technology that we have.
Just a pure photonics question here. When you talk about laser integration, right, there are any number of areas that can present its own set of bottlenecks. You can talk about the differences between integrating a visible source versus a non-visible source, architecture considerations. As far as it pertains to Dust's solution, what are the real challenges with laser integration that you're aiming to address now?
I did laser integration back in the days at Mellanox. We acquired a silicon photonics company. That's where my experience started. And we did laser integration, and it wasn't working very well at the time. Taking a laser is very sensitive. So if you don't integrate it in the right way, it will not work, or it will not work in a reliable way. So there's challenges in terms of how you interface it into the chip. There's challenges which type of materials you use. And of course, there are challenges of which laser you use, and that means if you have to do some special customizations, you're going to even have a difficult way to scale that. So in DustPhotonics today, we have a solution which actually addresses all of that, and that's how we actually plan this technology. We take off-the-shelf lasers, no special customization, where we have multiple sources. We integrate them on with materials and processes which are very standard. And so we took away all these challenges I mentioned before to make it happen in a scalable way with our solution.
The technology arc, and we have talked about this a little bit, but the technology arc of silicon photonics broadly has arrived at a point now where you talk about systems, components, devices, and it's immediately tied very tightly to volume production, right? And that is sort of a natural progression for any technology. But in a forward-looking way, what do you see as the next wave of solutions or even solution areas that are going to emerge to meet the demands of volume production as these demands are continuing to advance?
So, first I would like to address, the need for silicon photonics, became in the last years a necessity more than people imagined. Beyond the fact that you needed the silicon photonics to get to a smaller size, and there's things about the product. Actually, there are supply chain considerations which people didn't think it's going to get there. The parallel solution, the other solution that was the alternative solution, was taking discrete lasers, and that became a very big issue. There weren't enough sources. Wasn't enough scale to the number of lasers that were required to integrate. And silicon is very easy to scale. Again, when you look at silicon, it can scale to very high volume. Again, look at in silicon photonics today, I think the number of wafers which are used are tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 a year. It sounds big, but it's very small. If you look at electronics, TSMC has megafabs that make 100,000 a month. So really, scalability in silicon is just not an issue, and compared to lasers. So that's one part I just wanted to kind of point out.
That's
To
fair.
the
Yep.
next innovation, what silicon photonics platform is silicon photonics is a very good platform. And when we look at the next innovations to get to the higher speeds, for example, you can integrate some additional material. So you can integrate additional material like lithium niobate, which is another type of material which is used to get to higher bandwidth. You have other materials that may embed lasers into the silicon. And these are first innovations I would mention kind of to get to the higher speeds. In terms of scalability, like what innovations for scalability, the silicon photonics platform is scalable already, and it's going to scale for many, many years. It's really more how you get to that performance in the product that you need to integrate into that platform. And that's the examples I gave before.
I mentioned OFC, you mentioned ECOC. It's been a busy year and an eventful year for DustPhotonics. In light of your most recent response, what's next? I'm going to ask you what's next, but for DustPhotonics.
So I think one thing is that what we demonstrated in OFC and in ECOC is one of the products that we're now ramping up. So the first thing is really to ramp up the products we have. 800 gig is kind of now peaking. AI clusters have peaked already since a year ago. All the cloud services are now peaking. So 800 gig is really ramping up now. 1.6 terabit is our next speed product, which we're already sampling and we also announced. And that is actually a product which is going to start from the AI, but immediately after that, we see the cloud services adopting that faster than what you would imagine. Because I think, from a place where the industry didn't think that this technology can be possible, it's now very widely possible, very widely available. And so I think more cloud services companies will be using it even from next year or from the beginning of 26. So these are two things that we're doing now. And I could say that we're also working on our next generation, where you would be surprised how many companies are already looking at it. So that's going to be 400 gigabit per lane, which provides up to 3.2 terabit or even more. And here we have already done quite a lot of work, and we should have first products sampling test chips that we'll be sampling in the next month. So that's a scoop. I'm not sure anybody heard that before.
Well, thank you very much for using our platform here on the All Things Photonics podcast to share those insights. Ronnen Lovinger is CEO and also a board member of DustPhotonics. Appreciate your time. Best of luck moving forward, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much.
Today's episode is brought to you by Avantes. Unlock the power of light with Avantes. For over 30 years, we've delivered precision fiber optic spectroscopy, trusted for custom integration and reliable data. Discover how to empower your application, industrial, scientific, or beyond. Visit avantes.com and experience spectroscopy solutions that innovate. Today's episode is also brought to you by LightPath Technologies. From concept through prototyping, volume production, and global distribution, LightPath has the optical knowledge and manufacturing expertise to be your optics partner every step of the way. Visit lightpath.com to learn more.
And now here's senior editor Joe Kosinski with Boston University professor and this year's SPIE Biophotonics Technology Innovator Award recipient, Ji-Xin Cheng.
Joe Kosinski, senior editor with Photonics Spectra here, and I'm joined by Ji-Xin Cheng, professor at Boston University and head of the Ji-Xin Cheng Group, focusing on manipulating photons for precision medicine. Professor, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Well, at first, I just have to ask, I in reading a little bit more background about you, very decorated, and I just wanted to ask, how do you get involved in a field like this?
Yeah, Joe, you asked a great question. Yeah, actually, when I was a PhD student in 1990s, my major was physical chemistry, and I studied the spectroscopy in gas phase and in condensed phase. So in 1999, the Nobel Prize in chemistry was awarded to the Weil for his pump probe spectroscopy technology. So at that time, spectroscopy was used to study molecules in gas phase or in solution, right? But not in the living cells. So how to apply spectroscopy to study a very complex system like living cells and tissues was considered to be a very challenging question. And I got a chance to work on this when I was visited Sunny Hsieh's lab in in Harvard in 2000, and then I became a postdoc in Sunny's lab, developing this CARS microscopy for coherent anti-Stokes Raman scattering, which allows a high-speed Raman spectroscopic imaging living cells. But then in 2003, I joined Purdue University, and I wanted to do something even more dramatic. So my training is in physical chemistry, but I chose to join the biomedical engineering as a junior faculty. And this allowed me to build a research team with strong expertise in instrumentation to build these advanced chemical microscopes. And now these microscopes are commercially available and used by the many labs in different countries. So this is a very brief summary of my career.
2024 has been a big year for you. You've been recognized for your hard work with several awards, most recently for your work and developments in Raman spectroscopy. We know there's great potential for stimulated Raman scattering microscopy, but there's still some limitations too. So what can be done, or what do you think needs to be done to kind of overcome these limitations and to expand maybe into some new applications?
That's a good question. The stimulated Raman scattering microscopy was developed or invented around 2008, and it allows high-speed vibration imaging in the background-free manner. But there are still a few limitations. The first one is the sensitivity is still not enough. It can reach chemical bonds at a minimal level, but for many molecules, we study actually at an even lower concentration. The other thing is that the stimulated Raman scattering is very sensitive to the excitation lasers. So if you use a fiber lasers, compact fiber laser, we still need a band detection to a complicated detection scheme to do this technique. So about a few years ago, my group come up with a new solution to address these issues. We called stimulated Raman photothermal microscopy. So the conceptually in physics that we can think about the stimulated Raman is essentially a two-photon vibrational excitation process. So one beam go up and the other beam go down. It pumps the molecule to the excited state. So by doing this, you actually deposit energy to the molecule, and that energy deposition will create a heat and it causes a thermal lens. And then we use another beam to measure the thermal lensing effect. It turns out that this boosts the sensitivity by 500 times for pure DMSO solution, and allow us to see very small particles in this thermosensitive medium. Also, this technique, because we use another beam to measure the thermal effect, we are not very sensitive to the noise in the fiber laser. So this gives us the opportunity to build a compact microscope using fiber laser as the excitation source. So we quickly we have made such a very compact system, and now this system is being commercialized by a few companies. So I hope that this stimulated Raman photothermal microscopy offers a few advantages. One is higher sensitivity and can be operated by a fiber laser. Although it makes the operation much easier because we can use an air condenser to collect a signal from a multi-well chamber. So I believe that in a few years to come, this will quickly broaden the application of this SIS microscopy.
Very interesting. And you're talking about some facilities already have something like this in the works. So what are the applications now that they are able to use this form of Raman spectroscopy, and what doors is this opening up for the medical community?
Yeah, so that's a very good question about the medical community for Raman spectroscopy. I would say that Raman spectroscopy is very elegant because it provides fingerprint information, which is beyond the reach of traditional label-free microscopy like phase contrast, right? But a cone has two sides for the same reason that it's not easy for a non-expert, especially in the medical community, to use and interpret the Raman signal, right? So I believe there's still a long way for Raman spectroscopy to be accepted by the medical community. But there's a hope. The AI now is huge impact on every aspect of our society and just received a Nobel Prize this year. I believe that with artificial intelligence to interpret the Raman signature, there's a very good chance that this elegant technology can be accepted by the medical community for diagnosis purpose, because we need AI will convert the Raman signature into a simple read of the disease aggressiveness or cancer, non-cancer, those things. But on the other side, that the Raman spectroscopy opens another opportunity is that it can discover new biomarkers through the fingerprint information. Actually, we have one 10 years ago that in the cell metabolism paper, we discovered this cholesterol ester is a marker of cancer aggressiveness. So this means that the cholesterol metabolism is involved in cancer progression. And my former student, actually now in Beijing, actually just turned this discovery into a life-saving treatment by targeting the cholesterol metabolism in aggressive cancer.
And what does that feel like? Because to see what you're working on, not just appreciate it, but put into practice and saving lives. What kind of feeling is that to know that you're working on advancements that will, give someone another birthday next year, or just better quality of life?
I feel great. I think that I believe this is really that the most rewarding part of research is that your research is more than just a paper, right? You hope that you can have a impact on people's life, and I, we that's the beauty of this the imaging to discovery driven imaging as well. And I hope that this can be used. We can make an instrument even simpler and it can be used by a non-expert. So my dream is that let the users make new discoveries and using our tool to make a new discovery and saving even more life. Yeah.
That's a great thing. And you mentioned before the use and integration of AI, which is, such a boom right now in the photonics industry. So how far away are we from AI helping out in these procedures to gather the data to help, process it into something that anyone can understand? Could you comment on how far we may be from AI making this more usable?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? I think the AI tool is there, but AI is also driven by data. Compared to more traditional like HNE staining, the Raman data is not enough to make AI a routine tool in the clinic. But I think it's very promising. A lot of researchers are working on this, including my own group, and I hope that in the next few years, we will see that this AI-driven, AI-based spectroscopic diagnosis of disease will be used in the clinic.
Earlier this year, you received the 2024 SPIE Biophotonics Technology Innovator Award. The work you've done can help clearly detect and identify viruses in ways we couldn't before. Can you kind of quantify what this could mean to the medical community? Naturally, rapid detection of any virus is an amazing tool in treating it. Can you kind of explain to me on a grander scale what this could mean for identifying and treating viruses?
Yeah, thank you. I'm also happy to tell you a few sentences about how we invented this tool, right? So I used to work on these CARs and SIs and Raman spectroscopy for imaging. But a very fundamental limit of Raman spectroscopy is that the cross section is very low. It's 10 to minus 30 as compared to fluorescence, which is 10 to minus 16. So this limits the final sensitivity. And about 15 years ago, we have been trying to overcome this fundamental limit by thinking out of the Raman box. So, in a outer Raman box, you see the mid-infrared absorption, and this mid-infrared absorption, the cross section is actually 100 millions times bigger than Raman scattering, and this creates an opportunity, right, to boost the sensitivity. So IR spectroscopy itself is a big field. There are pioneers in FTIR like Rohit Bhargava and in Abhinav Champagne and many others. But it itself has a fundamental problem as well, is that the resolution is very poor because the IR wavelength is a few micron. So if you do FTIR imaging of cells, you don't see any details in the cell because the resolution is as big as the cell size. So how to break the diffraction limit? So that's our invention. It's called a mid-infrared photothermal. It's a pump probe technology. Use IR to pump to excite the chemical bond, but we use a visible beam to measure the photothermal effect. So the IR heating or exciting chemical bond will change the local refracting index, and you can measure that the local change of refracting index through a visible beam at the visible diffraction limit. So by doing this, we can reach the visible diffraction limit, which is about 300 nanometer in spatial resolution, to do this bond selective imaging. And IR, because a bigger cross section, it gives the sensitivity. And so by doing this, we can reach a micromolar detection sensitivity instead of millimolar in CARs or SIS microscopy. So this opens a lot of opportunities. We can map low concentration molecule in living cells, we can map very small, like nanoparticle, like a virus, which is about 100 nanometer or smaller in size. We can get that fingerprint information from an individual virus. We can differentiate different type of virus based on the chemical content. So this opens tremendous amount of opportunities. For example, for subtyping different virus, to monitor their evolution, right, during a pandemic in a label-free manner. And also, we recently expanded this to others. For example, we now can determine the chemical content of the for these gene delivery vectors. Like now, there are a lot of vectors that deliver mRNA to as a medicine, and the company want to know that whether the particle is empty or filled with this mRNA. So we now can do this in a label-free manner, and this is probably the only approach that can do high throughput and measure these individual particles. There are many other things that we are working on, but in general, that we have been developing a new direction for the chemical imaging field called photothermal microscopy, which is like a pump with a chemical bond and a detection with a visible beam. And this turns out to be a very sensitive technique. How this will go for the medical community, I think that it's also that very enormous. For example, you can never apply the mid-infrared beam to a tissue because no photon will come back. But by doing this photothermal, you can measure the reflection or backscattering of visible beam. So we just submitted a manuscript recently. We can measure the drug distribution within a human skin. This is in the volunteer. So we can also do the human subject for in vivo diagnosis.
And this process is safe. You haven't seen any
It's definitely safe. Actually, we just heat up the molecule of skin by a couple of degrees, right? And that's much safer than UV and even safer than X-ray. Yeah. Mm.
Interesting. So this virus detection system, where is this in terms of stage of development, and how far are we from seeing this being something that you might find at your doctor's office down the street?
Yeah, I think that I think what to say, this is in research state. We do file the IP from Boston University, and there are companies interested in this technology. So we hope that in the near future, right, this can be a, a, a platform technology that can be used by non-expert, just like the photothermal microscope, which we have convert into a system called Mirage that is used by many labs in many countries. So that the Mirage is for scientists, for discovery-driven research. And I do hope that our next dream is to make a device that can be used by doctors.
And how important is that to make these devices that are so complex something that can be used by someone who doesn't have the same background,
Yeah.
who doesn't have the same knowledge of the sciences?
How important? Oh, it's very important. I view this is really that because these are the high tech. Like they need a training. In my lab, a student need a year's training to become expert, right? And this, if we only do this, we only a very small percent of people can use this technology. They have to be trained in my lab or in other expert lab. But this is a very small community. If we can really make this into a compact turnkey system, so this will really enable like biologists, right, medical doctors, the industry people to use this machine for their own research or diagnosis or even treatment, and the impact is much bigger. So that's my vision. I always view that I just told my students this morning, research is bigger than a paper, right? It's if you can make your research into product, that will create a much bigger impact.
Professor Cheng, thank you so much for joining us today on the All Things Photonics podcast. I really appreciate you giving me the time.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
With that, we conclude another episode of All Things Photonics. Thank you to our sponsors, to the technical staff behind the scenes, and to continued support from the Photonics Media editorial team. As always, questions, comments, thoughts, and ideas are welcome. Let us know how we're doing via email at allthings@photonics.com. All Things Photonics is available on all major platforms and on our website, photonics.com.